started.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Community Speaks Live Q&A session 3. This is our last session of live Q&As with our amazing performers. Um, hope you all enjoyed the show and the inspirational stories that our performers have worked on and shared with you. If you have any questions for them, please feel free to post them in the chat box. We will be conducting this Q&A for about 40-45 minutes, and I will try my best to get to as many audience questions as possible. While to get you guys started, I am going to post a question to the performers. Hey guys, so you guys, we've been through this process for the last 3 months. It's been intense. We've had these conversations yesterday. But my question to you is, out of all the experiences, the writing and the editing and the vulnerability and the emotions, what is the one takeaway that you have out of this experience for yourself? Like, what is the one thing that you will take with you after this program is over? I'm going to go left to right from my screen. So, Turfa, let's begin with you.
I think one thing I'm going to take away is I want to now do a support group for moms. And I never did a virtual, so many participants together on Zoom. This experience has taught me it is possible. And I'm feeling very sad about my Sunday workshops coming to an end. So I have that time slot as well. And I've been talking to some of the other participants who would want to, maybe get together again or help me in this creating this support group. So that is one thing that I'm taking away, and hopefully I can, implement it and create a support group for other people who are feeling lonely in this pandemic.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you're taking that with you. Saleha, what about you?
One thing that I am taking away from this experience is the validation, like the solid piece of validation that I got by just sharing my story. Because although I know it's real, like just sharing it and out into the world, this validates it even more. So it's part of my process of breaking my boundaries and to really starting to go after the things that I want to do 1% at a time, one step at a time. So that was really important for me. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm so glad you found that strength in sharing. Abhi, what about you?
Yeah, I think in addition to taking away all these wonderful people here on the screen and the relationships and the connections that we formed over the last 2 months, really what I hope that this experience will help me in my life moving forward is to remind myself and remember that the only thing that I can really do is to speak my truth and to own it completely and to be seen by my community and not to hide from my truth. So I'm taking away a little bit, I guess you could call it courage, to in the future, if with any experiences in my life, that I feel more open and more willing to speak my truth. Because what is obvious to me is when I speak my truth, I encourage other people to speak theirs. And that's how we form connections together, which is what we've done here. So, yeah.
So well said, Abhi. So well said. Masoon?
What I'm taking away from this workshop is to keep on writing. And I was struggling with this. I was really, because, people would say, write your feelings, whenever I would have anxiety or something and, going into depression phase, and they will say, write, but write a journal. But I really didn't know how to write. It was more of a sentence. He did, I ate, I went there, she called. But what the sphere has taught me is how to write with emotions, put your feelings. So that's one thing that I'm taking, and I'm very grateful for that. So I will keep on writing, and it gave me a confidence. So thank you.
Awesome. You're such a beautiful writer, and I'm so happy that you're going to continue writing. Please make sure you share that with us. Whenever you continue to write, I'd love to read some more of your pieces.
Definitely.
Adi, what about you?
I think aside from all the amazing friendships, I think I'm going to take away the reminder for, or going forward, a reminder of like the non-judgmental attitude that we've created for ourselves and for each other, moving forward, and creating a non-judgmental space. Um, and then also, like Masin said, like I want to continue writing because I used to be so afraid of writing. And I'm an aspiring writer and filmmaker, so I would love to, I would love to take my story forward.
Yes, and I can't wait to read your stories as well, because all of you guys, you are such amazing writers, and it's inspirational to know that you are going to continue this. Mahima, what about you?
When I had started this workshop, the intention was to reconnect with writing. It used to be an outlet many years ago, and then I just stopped for some reason. And also, like, have the courage to to indulge in the art of storytelling. So it was a way of me putting myself, getting myself out of my comfort zone. So I managed to do that, but the end result I realized is that I feel a lot lighter. Like it's a weird feeling. Like you feel like a weight has been lifted off of your shoulder. And to Abhi's and Adi's point, where they said that you must give people the benefit of doubt, that they may not receive you with judgment, and they could surprise you in a good way, where they'll receive you and they'll empathize with you. So that is something that I've experienced, not only just with this group, but I invited a few of my friends to and they were in the audience, and they reached out to me. And I feel like that has strengthened my relationship with them. So, I think that is a huge takeaway. Like, I've really enjoyed this experience.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how people who know you, who know these stories, and they see you in a different light after you share that. I had a similar experience during my performance as well. It's magical. I like to say it's magic.
And
Magic.
if it hadn't been for the stage, it would have taken me years to get to that point where I open up that much.
I am so glad. I am so glad you got to open up. Dipti, what about you?
Yeah, I think that there's lots of takeaways from this for me, and I appreciate having got to know all of you great folks. The connections are really important, and I think all our conversations around mental health and destigmatization begins with first, telling our story, reaching out, breaking those barriers, and we've done that here. And so this is a way, if we can do it for ourselves and we can show that this can be done with community building and real compassion, then we can truly sort of open this world to other people where they can also do the same. So that has really helped. So thank you everyone for this great opportunity. It was really great to meet you all and tell our stories as a group. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dipti. Paroma, what about you?
For me, it was listening. I wasn't a patient listener at all. And like a lot of South Asians, my attitude was go get a grip on yourself and move on. And this definitely has taught me to be a lot more compassionate and listen very closely and not to judge immediately. And I am extremely, extremely thankful for that.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. Um, We have some audience comments coming in. I'm going to read them out. Sairam says, really commend all of you. It was truly moving to hear you and to see your courage in sharing your truth. Big, big props to you all. Anjali says, each one of you brought tears to me. Anjali also has a question. Has have you faced any of your perpetrators and what was your reaction? Everybody in your story, you talk about um, some relationship with someone. After going through this process, perpetrators or some character in your story, have you had the opportunity to meet with them, and what was your reaction based on that? Dipti, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I have not met my perpetrator, and I have imagined what it might be if I did meet this person. And he's back in India, and I don't know if I will, but I have imagined it and what I might say. And so, yeah. But I haven't met him. But I've heard about him, and it still brings those feelings back whenever I hear about him, and it's not a good feeling. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That even after doing so much work, it's normal and it's natural to get those feelings, and it's okay to get those feelings. Abhi, what about you?
Well, I'm trying to think of the question. So, I mean, in the context of my story, yeah, like I can't really put my finger on like a perpetrator, so to say. But yeah, I think what the conversation that I want to have, the least, or rather the most fear I have is, having a conversation about this with my parents. So it's not quite, I'm not answering the question directly, but in that context, I would say that I am, a part of me is looking forward to it because I touch upon it in the story, that it is one of my biggest fears, to share something so personal with them. And I don't know when I'll be having that conversation honestly with them. I guess I'd never really be ready. So I'm just trusting the universe, and when it has to unfold organically, I trust that it'll happen and I'll be able to say what needs to be said. But yeah, I carry some fear around that still, with the possibility that it could open up the door for a beautiful relationship, start of a new journey in our relationship as father son, mother son. So let's see. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for you, Abhi, always. Masoon, what about you?
I actually did see my ex after the divorce process, and we had a very hard divorce. There was a lot of issues on that, but later on, my kids went to college, and when I met my current husband, and around that time, I was at the restaurant and buying food, and my ex was standing right next to me, and it was a very strange feeling because I've moved on and I'm starting my new life, and he's right there, and I couldn't hide. So we have to talk. So I said Assalamu alaikum, very casual conversation we had. And the strange thing was that when we were married, he seemed so big, so powerful. He was like, I was so small and he was big. But that day when I saw him, he looked so small, you know and I don't have any ill feeling toward him. I actually had a really good conversation about the kids, and and when I was leaving the restaurant, I actually looked back, and I had a good look at him, and I prayed for him. that, I hope he has a good health, and I hope he's happy, God protect him, because, he is my father of my kids. If he's okay, they are fine, you know. So so that's what made me move on from all that, negativity. So yeah, I'm fine with him. I'm okay with him.
More power to you, Masoon, to take away that power from him. And so, so great. Turfa, I know you have a story about your dad. Do you want to share with the group?
Yes. So after the recording was done, I woke up feeling this purposeless, hopeless feeling I used to have when I was going to therapy actively and very suicidal. And back then, I understood that the suicidal thoughts would come and go because of maybe what I had shared or uncovered in therapy. But here, after so many years, not so many years, a year or so, I haven't felt that, like, why am I alive? Why am I waking up? Why should I get out of bed? Just like nothing was making has any meaning in my life. And I woke up, my husband is standing there, and every morning we hug. So I said, and he saw that I was down, I was low. He said, are you okay? I'm like, I think I need a hug. And I was hugging him, and I realized the hollow feeling I was feeling was not going away. I was feeling good, but it was not his hug that I needed. And I told him, you know what, I think I'm missing my dad. I want his hug. I just, and when I said it, it's like something clicked, like that's what you're feeling, and I don't, I at that day I didn't know if my father would see my story. I still don't know if he has seen it, probably not, but just putting it out there made me feel like I have to do something. Otherwise, this feeling will never go away. It will keep coming back to haunt me. So a few days later, we went to visit my parents, and I was having a conversation with my dad about some documents I needed from him about this, financial stuff. And he was answering in his usual tone, his usual way. And I'm also talking to him normally, but in my mind, a voice was telling me that just tell him you want to hug him. Just tell him. Another voice was saying, no, what's the point? Nothing's gonna change. But like, don't think about change, just hug him. So these two turfas were talking in my head. And after the documents and everything was out of the way, I just said, can I, Abu, I'm really missing you, can I just hug you? And he smiled and he embraced me, and we just stayed like that for a few minutes. And he just kept holding me, and I felt the warmth of his body against my body. And it's not a feeling I used to, because I haven't hugged him that many times in my life. And we just stayed there for a few minutes, and then he said, he was rubbing my back, and he said, "Tumi bhalo acho to?" Are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay, I was just missing you. And that void, that darkness, that purposelessness, that hopelessness just went away. And I made a decision. I'm going to make that effort, keep making more memories with him. And yeah, that's if, and maybe if he sees my story, then I will sit with him and tell him, I just said what was true for me, and it doesn't make my love for you any less. It just makes me want to have more memories with you.
That's fantastic, Turfa. I am so glad you got that hug and that feeling came back, right? It's so important to feel that. We are getting some amazing questions from the audience. So I'm gonna uh, get the next question for you. Um, Ravi says, what do we, in the South Asian community, what can we do to remove the stigma associated with family instability, mental issues, sexual orientation, preferences, etc.? Kudos to you guys. Is there anyone who wants to start, or should I just call out a name? Saleha, why don't you go?
Can you repeat the question? That was a very long question.
Absolutely. What, as South Asian community, can we do to remove the stigma associated with family instability, mental issues, sexual orientation preferences, etc. Like, what as a community can we do to make it
Yeah.
easier?
The first thing that was coming to my mind was just like it all stems from the community. So whatever community you are in, whether that's religious or non-religious, like there should be something there for first generation, second generation uh, children of immigrants who are going through this. And like I know we always say there should be something, but sometimes we have to make that first step to get the ball going. So like that's what I think, like programs where like we talk about these issues. Like for example, we're talking about mental health nowadays. So this is just as important, like the adjustments and the identity issues that you go through. Like, are you white or are you Asian? Do you like pizza or do you like biryani? So it's like, no, we're gonna eat both together. Like, I know that's a silly, like, example, but that the community, like, starts with the community. So
Thank you. Mohima, what about you?
I feel like personally from my experience, I feel like there should be better, like schools and other institutes should be better equipped with like um, more insightful counselors, to check in with kids. My experience in school was that as long as my grades were up and I wasn't a troublemaker, I was fine. And as long as I just lied about everything that was going on at home, I could just get away with it. Like nobody knew what was going on. But at that time, I really needed someone in my corner, and I was not in a position to find that person in my family. So I really needed like these other places, where children go. I needed someone there. So I think just having better trained in people or more in infrastructure for that, especially in India.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mohima. Masoon, what about you?
Um, what I needed from the community at that time, I mean, what the community could help in the situation, my situation, would be if someone is, saying that, telling their story and saying that, okay, this is what happening with me. Don't pass judgment, don't say, leave, because it's very hard to leave. You can't just get up and leave. My part was where I couldn't tell people was because they would say, if I were in this situation, I don't know how you handle it. If I were in your situation, I would leave. And if I'm not leaving, then it makes me feel like I'm beneath them. So if someone is in a situation, don't tell them to leave. Just listen to them. They'll tell you when they're ready to do something. I think that's what I would have wanted.
Thank you. This is very good, Masoon. Someone's background is Dipti. Thank you, Dipti. Dipti, do you want to take the next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just think that for that question, I think that a lot of what other people said is really good, but I think within our own families, we have to start. So where we can, have those conversations with our children, as parents, we can encourage those conversations with our children, be there when they have those conversations, to listen to them and not like be judgmental or dismissive or jump to solve the problem. Like sometimes we just have to listen and understand it from their perspective and take it seriously, and be there. So as someone said, not just focusing on the academics or the grades, or there's more to life than that. And so the emotions are equally important. So building emotional intelligence as well as other intelligences, right? So that comes from home, from your family, from your parents. And then we can move to the next level with the outside, school, education, community, society, but it starts at home, right? So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Very well said. Very, very well said, Dipti. Paroma, what about you?
I think it has to start from within the community, and especially we are very good at skirting issues. If somebody says something, we're like, oh, they're old, they don't understand, so we don't want to confront them. Oh, they've just come from India, they don't understand, we don't want to confront them. We cannot keep on sort of saying, no, this person is special, so we don't want to confront them about their views, or we don't want to correct them, or we don't want the don't want to tell them that, look, this is not what you should have said, or I felt bad. I mean, we are very good at sort of saying, oh, no, 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 we won't do that. I think that is fundamentally what I feel needs to change. And in a lot of social situations, I know I'm guilty of it. It'll be somebody older, I'm like, okay, I'll just let it go, because otherwise people will think I'm always like, trying to pick a fight. And I think that prevents us from actually confronting someone, and that just perpetuates the whole thing within the community, because it's somehow seen as okay, and that shouldn't be the case. So I think all of us, even at the risk of being seen as maybe too outspoken, this is something we all have to do for ourselves.
That is so well said, Param. And I have to say, I'm also guilty of that. As like, oh, what's the point of even talking to them? Nothing's gonna change. But yeah, you're right, right? Like, it's important to say your truth. Like Abhi said, it's very important to say your truth, because at least that way you are not enabling that behavior. So thank you for that. Adi, what about you?
I think I like echo what everyone has said so far. But I also believe that the education, both in schooling and at home, needs to happen within different generations. Like as kids, we can do it, but then also there's a responsibility to either help our parents get educated, or as parents have those conversations, like Dipti said, with your kids. I think specifically around gender and race, especially nowadays, but also having an open like viewpoint of like different views and different mindsets. Um, and then I also think it's not just having not just educating, but then also, yeah, like I said, having those conversations, and also creating a space where like dialogue can happen. Because I think, like Paroma said, like sometimes you can get in almost like a I'm only talking and then someone's talking back at me, but no listening is really happening and nothing is being moved forward. So I think creating a space where you're able to speak what you would want, but also be challenged. Yeah.
Yeah, that being challenged piece is so important, right? Like that's, I think even us, right? Like it's difficult to like, oh, if someone's gonna come and challenge you and you're like, oh no, I am right. But it's important to have that open mind of understanding someone else's perspective. So great point, Adi. Turfa, what about you?
Um, I kind of broke it down into three folds because ever since my mental health journey started, I took it upon myself to raise awareness about this, and I do it by just talking about my story. And I started a Facebook page to just openly talk about what I've been through and talk about the emotional side, because I think in our South Asian community, what we don't talk about and we don't ask the question is, how do you feel? Or how did that make you feel? So this question needs to come up first in the family. The parents should take the initiative, because children can't. And just maybe at dinner times when they sit together, every now and then ask your teenage kids or your little kids, how are you feeling? And how did that make you feel? And when you ask that question, be ready to listen to anything and anything that might come to you without immediately trying to solve the other person's problem, as Dipti mentioned. And secondly, I think the leaders of the community, especially maybe if it's at the mosque or the temple or somebody who's a political figure, somebody who's known in the community, they need to talk about these stigmatized topics so that the people who are listening to them feel that this is something they can talk about. This is not something that should be unspoken. And these leaders should be South Asian. If they're South Asian, they should take this initiative because we tend to follow people who look like us. And if you're a kid, maybe you're an adult or a young adult, and you have those parents who are not going to talk to you, use the resources available. Now we live in a world where if you look, you will find support groups, you will find places you can go and talk to people. Even if it is someone random like me you heard about in a show or a workshop and a post somewhere, reach out and know that you are not the only one going through whatever it is you're going through, whether it's something gender related, whether it's something mental health related, whether it's a divorce related, whatever you're going through. I know it feels like your pain and your problem is the biggest problem, biggest pain, and no one will understand. I felt like that. I can tell you, maybe Abhi felt like that. Once you reach out, just extend your hand, you will get the help you need. So sometimes you also have to do your bit because no one can help you if you help yourself.
Very well said, Turfa. Very well said. Thank you. Thank you for that. Abhi, let's hear from you, and then I'll. There are so many comments and questions coming in, and I can't wait to share them all with you.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I have actually anything more to add. I mean, so many wonderful suggestions or thoughts have been shared by the other people. Yeah, I mean, as I hear everybody, in a few words, what the words that come to me is emotional intelligence. And I think Dipti mentioned it, maybe through, several of you, that just like in school, right? Now, I'm not talking this just from a South Asian perspective, but just overall, we need to make it normal in chemistry and biology. We should learn emotional intelligence. What does that mean? Because if the kids are not schooled and trained from an early age, then you don't have that vocabulary to communicate with each other. It is not easy to have these conversations, right? If I go to a bar, with a group of friends, to immediately come down to, hey, how are you feeling? There's a time and place to have those conversations. And I think that comes back to creating those spaces where, everybody feels safe, right? And everybody feels like they can share what's going on with them. So maybe that's where the community comes in, the initiative to create more spaces, this one being a prime example, right, of a space like that. So yeah, I think it's, like a multi-pronged effort. Nothing's going to change if individually we don't do our part in it. And it's going to take time, unfortunately, with the reality of the world and the society that we live in, but not to give up hope, right? Everybody has a part to play. Yeah.
Very well said, Abhi, of individual responsibility, right? Like we all have to do our parts. We have so many comments. I'm going to just quickly go through some comments. Um, so Anjali says, thank you for explaining. By perpetrator, I meant maybe not an evil person, but a situation in which caused you hurt and pain. Um, Anjali also says, Masoon, you are indeed very, very courageous. Um, Bipasha says, Abhi, I remember from my 2009 YKD performance, you told her piece about her mom had deeply impacted you, and you could identify with it and write to your own parents. And it's a privilege to hear yours today. This circle feels whole now, which is so amazing. Um, uh, Anjali says, Turfa, it's amazing how you have been able to develop such loving relationship with your husband. It's beautiful. Um, Adi, I have a question for you from Bipasha. Bipasha says, Adi, did your family watch this? Where do things stand with them now?
Thank you for the question. My parents or my family did watch it, just the most recent one. So they've just watched it today. Um, I think things have always stood good. They've always been going up in like a positive manner. My parents have been, or my family has been really open to, my point of view, which is like all I can ask for. They've always been there to listen. Um, I think it's like I mentioned in my story, telling my family, specifically my mom, kind of opened like a different sort of floodgate for me where I realized I was receiving so much love and acceptance, and that was so great. But then I also realized there was like a relationship that I hadn't paid attention to, which was myself, with myself. And that's where kind of like the hard work began. And it's like a day to day sort of like process. So every day is different, but I'm continuing to work on that. Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. Abhi, I have a question for you. Did your family get to watch this? Do you know if they did?
So, short answer is I don't know. I am assuming that they haven't watched it yet, because my expectation would be that if they did, I would, they would call me. So I don't know. Like I said, I think earlier, I would like to at some point share just my story with them. But yeah, I don't want to force the issue, and then I also recognize that time is not, time is just slipping by. And so yeah, that's probably the future. uh, uh, I don't know what it holds for our relationship together, but let's see.
I hope you get to share it. I really hope you get to share that with your parents.
Yeah.
Some more comments. Saleha, Masoon, Dipti, everything you guys said about the society, Anjali really, really resonates with that. Paroma, Anjali also says what you said was so pertinent. Um, it's a very good point about, Sri Sairam says that this is a very good point you brought up about avoiding confrontation, because that seems like a very strong South Asian trait. So this is such fantastic conversation. Thank you, everybody in the audiences for these amazing comments. Um, what is the? Let me just go through and let me get you the next question. We have a question from Sairam. Did you feel being South Asian, especially folks that are first generation immigrants, that has put a bigger burden on being or even looking like we have a perfect life and keep up the facade of, the model minority? But I know you really have to go, so please, can we hear from you before you leave?
Um, thank you, thank you. Um, yes and no. Yes and no. And the reason yes is it's not so much as a pressure to have the perfect family life, but more in terms of your outward achievements. So that's the yes part, because you're always held up to a higher bar. You're always held up to how come you couldn't, do this? This is expected of you. So on top of being sort of a woman, in any case, when you have to meet that bar of you have to be slightly better than some of your male colleagues, then being South Asian puts that even higher. So yes, on that part, I definitely think that that pressure is there. So
Thank you for sharing that, Roma. Adi, I know you touched upon that a little bit in your story. Do you want to add to something? Add. Bye, Paroma. See you.
Yeah, I think it's like what Paroma said, yes and no. I think there are definitely elements, or there are certain cultural milestones that I feel being South Asian I'm meant to hit. But I also believe there are milestones just as that society have set up for me and for all of us to certainly hit, in terms of like a certain type of job, a certain salary, marriage, kids, what have you. Um, I think with the South Asian aspect, I think there's an even more importance to those milestones, and they hold sort of like a cultural currency, if you may, for especially for, as I feel, as a younger generation, that my parents or older generations almost used to barter with each other, like my son has this, your son has this, that sort of element. And so I think that definitely puts pressure. Um, what I found in my situation, like I mentioned earlier, um, I'm in the privileged position that I have parents who are willing to be educated and willing to listen. So I've definitely had those conversations where I've let them know how much those milestones or those expectations can impact me and have impacted me. So I think that, yeah, so like I mentioned, there is an element of that pressure, but again, it goes back to having those conversations.
Yeah, it, that's it's so impressive for me that every time we have these discussions, it definitely just boils down to open communication and open conversations, right? So thank you for that. Mohima, we haven't heard from you in a bit, so do you want to answer this?
I think my answer is going to echo a lot of what has already been said. So it's yes and no. Yes, in the sense, and not just like within the South Asian community itself, but also like this country as a whole. Like, you're expected to fit within the realm of that model minority. And like, people make these assumptions at face value that, you might, okay, you must be really good at math, and you must be like, I live in Seattle, so you must be a techie. And I don't have any, I have a humanities background. So I'm like a unicorn. Like, it doesn't make sense to both non-resident Indians and to most Americans, because they haven't met people like me. So that's like, that was a little um irksome at first, but the no part is that I feel like there's more freedom to being yourself over here, as it in comparison to what it would have been like back home. So I completely acknowledge that. I'm always grateful for it, that I have more freedom in this country as a woman. And even if there are, certain perceptions or expectations that I'm not meeting of, South Asian people over here, I have more freedom to not care about what they think. So I don't have anything to prove to anyone. So I carry that mindset with me.
That's amazing. Mohima, I know you wanted to address some of the other questions. Do you want to quickly do that?
So there was, yeah, sure. So there was a question about confronting your perpetrator, and it actually brought back a memory. And I'm going to give you the synopsis version of it. So after my parents separated and the divorce was about to be finalized, my mother was feeling very guilty that, you're going to lose your relationship with your father, and, you still, if you can have it, you can, you should still try to preserve it. I don't know why she did that, but she did that. um, and this one time he actually visited when I was 11, and by then it had already been 3 years he had left. And I distinctly remember, like, I did not want to meet him. I was very clear with my mother. I even, since I was a minor, I think she had asked me if I wanted to testify in court, and I said I don't want to meet him. I don't want this. But he still came home, and I remember that everyone was being very superficial, like, superficial cordial, like it was awkward and tense, and everyone's being nice to each other. And he offered to save my cell phone number on his phone, and I'll never forget this. That I gave it to him, and he spelled my name backwards when he did that, because he didn't want anyone to know that it was my number that was saved on his phone, because he was already living with his other wife and his other family by then. And it was like, I was 11, so I couldn't call him out on that. But it became very clear to me that I'd never want to see this person again. So that was like, so I would say yes. And that's like the first real, like, very solid decision. I don't want to see you again. So yeah.
I'm so sorry that you had to make this hard decision at the age of 11, but more power to you for recognizing what you need at that age, and making sure that you are protecting yourself. So more power to you, and hugs to you.
Thank you.
Coming back to our question, Dipti, The question that was going before we took a tangent was, do you feel like being South Asian, especially folks that are first generation immigrants, that has put a bigger burden on being or even looking like we have a perfect life and keep up a facade? I think that is frozen. Tulfa, would you like to answer this?
Yes, and I wanted to answer this because I distinctly remember after we moved here, just maybe a few days, I didn't post anything on Facebook. Oh, my husband had moved a year or a half after me because of the whole sponsorship process taking so long. And we just didn't post for a couple of days. And someone from Bangladesh asked us, "Are you guys okay? Because you haven't posted anything on Facebook." And and for the first time, me and my husband, we looked at each other and we're like, so to make it look like we're okay, we have to put up pictures. And that was that one incident. But then as times went by, I didn't realize I was under the pressure until you're trying to find that job where you can proudly say, I work for this company, which wasn't happening in my life. So that's when I felt the burden that I am constantly trying to put up a facade that life is perfect. I'm taking pictures of places where I'm going. I'm not showing which company I'm working from, but I'm constantly trying to show on social media that my life is all hunky dory and wonderful and I'm just living it up. But in the inside, it was like a hollow shell. And I felt it more because I could understand that the reality here is different. The people here understanding that this is not real. But then people back home in Bangladesh, they're just seeing those pictures and thinking you must be making a lot of money, you must be having an awesome job in a big hotshot company, which is not true because of all the pictures you're posting up. And I took a decision that I'm no longer going to post any pictures of my trips because that is not the only thing that's happening in my life. So there's a constant burden, and the pressure is so real because people will tell you, are you guys okay? Why aren't there any pictures of you on Facebook? So the burden is very real.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Tufa. I know, like with all these pressures that we put on ourselves, that the society puts on us, with social media, it's just like such an added pressure, right? With that, I'm going to go to some final comments because we have to wind up. Um, we have a few comments from Abhi. Anjali says, so poignant that these supports are hardly available in mainstream school, let alone community. Um, Anjali says, Adi, do commend your parents for opening their arms. She says, you are amazingly serene in such an adverse situation. And the context of that is it was difficult for her to relive the experience of the process, relive the emotions of the process of coming out. So that is a comment to you. Sairam says to everybody, great point about being a minority and the stereotypes that come with it. We face a lot of subtle microaggressions every day through these expectations. Thank you all for your thoughts. Mohima Sairam sends you a hug. And Anjali says, Mohima, thank you for your answer. You, so strong. God give you more strength.
Thank you.
Um, with that, I'm going to read the last comment that we have here from Sairam. Wait, where did it go? Yes, I'm going to end with this amazing comment because I totally, Sriram, I totally agree with you. I'm so sorry I've been saying your name wrong. I was not wearing my glasses. Sriram, he says, it's a privilege to bear witness to your vulnerable and moving stories. Thanks for sharing. You all have shown tremendous courage to face your traumas and grow in spite of community stigma. Bravo. With that, we will be winding up. Thank you all so much for joining us and supporting and cheering our amazing, wonderful participants of Community Speaking the Taboo. Please follow Tasveer on social media. Use the handle tasveer.org. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube channel. It's also a fundraiser weekend, so please go to our website to show us some support if you've not already done so. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Have a great spring, and please stay safe. Please wear a mask. Good night and take care. Bye bye.